I told you not to cause a scene.
You are making this impossible.
The click of her heels on polished tile echoed too loud in the terminal, drawing eyes she did not want. The fluorescent lights above hummed like interrogation lamps, bleaching her skin into something the uniformed officer could scan for threat. Dr. Cassandra Holt, Harvard graduate, CEO of a rising biotech firm, had cleared security lines across 3 continents. Today, in her own country, her passport trembled in another man's grip. "Step aside, ma'am," the guard said. Flat, rehearsed. Her boarding group was already filing down the jet bridge. She forced calm into her tone. "My documents are valid. I have a meeting in Zurich in 14 hours. The guard's smirk was a private victory meant for her alone. He raised his voice so the line behind her could hear. Random search. Her chest constricted. Random. The word stung with its counterfeit neutrality. His gloved hand snapped against her carry-on, dismantling her neatly packed briefcase into fragments across a plastic tray. Inside, contracts, presentation slides, and the Mont Blanc pen her late father gave her, scattered like trash under fluorescent judgment. A teenage boy in line whispered too loud, "They always stop them." His mother tugged him quiet. Eyes darting away, Cassandra's breath hitched. The guard's fingers grazed her wrist, deliberate, unnecessary. Then, with mock formality, he murmured low, words no microphone would catch. "People like you don't run companies." A silence like thunder roared in her ears. Her body froze between fight and compliance, every gaze in the terminal piercing her. Then came the sudden crackle of a walkie-talkie. Another officer approached fast, face tight. "Chief wants her in the office, now." And just like that, Cassandra knew the real ordeal had only begun. The line moved in fits and starts, a shuffling current of bodies funneling toward the metal detector. Above, the terminal lights glared cold and white, stripping everything of warmth. Cassandra Holt adjusted the strap of her leather briefcase, her jaw set. She had crossed borders from Shanghai to Geneva without incident. Yet here, at a Midwestern American airport, her own passport felt like contraband. The TSA officer's eyes flicked to her, lingered a beat too long. His voice was flat. "Step aside, ma'am," her heartbeat lurched. "Why?" Random selection. Her nails pressed crescents into her palm. Random, neutral on paper, sharp in the mouth. She inhaled, forced composure, and stepped aside. Her briefcase was pulled onto the counter. The officer snapped his gloves into place with exaggerated precision. "Open it." Cassandra unclasped it herself, unwilling to let him paw at the locks. Inside lay the contracts for Zurich, a presentation laser-printed and bound, and her father's fountain pen in its velvet sleeve. He upended the contents anyway. Papers slid across the tray in disarray. The Mont Blanc pen clattered and rolled to the edge, narrowly avoiding the floor. Cassandra's throat tightened. She spoke low, clipped. "Be careful," the officer smirked. "Traveling for business?" Yes, he raised his brows. "And what business would that be?" "Holt Biogen. I'm the CEO," he chuckled, too loud. Passengers in line turned their heads. "You, CEO?" The words hung in the air, soaked in disbelief. A teenage boy in line whispered, not quiet enough. "They always stop them." His mother hushed him, eyes darting away. Cassandra steadied her breathing, spine iron straight. "This delay is unlawful. Return my documents." The officer leaned closer, voice dropping to a private murmur thick with disdain. "People like you don't run companies." The words slashed. Her vision tunneled. The fluorescent lights became interrogators' lamps. The terminal a courtroom without walls. Rage rose sharp and electric, but she forced it down. Outrage was fuel for them. Before she could answer, the crackle of a walkie-talkie sliced the air. Another officer strode up, face taut. "Chief wants her in the office, now." The first officer's grin spread, slow and triumphant. He swept her passport into his hand. Cassandra's chest constricted. Each step toward that office door was a descent. The hum of the terminal faded behind her, replaced by the low drone of fluorescent bulbs and the weight of every watching eye. Inside, she knew, the real dismantling would begin. The air in the small airport security office was stale, tinged with burnt coffee and disinfectant. A buzzing fluorescent bulb overhead cast Cassandra Holt's face in a harsh, unnatural glow. She sat stiff in a plastic chair, her leather briefcase emptied and rifled, slumped on the metal table before her like a body after surgery. Two officers stood opposite her. One leaned against the wall, arms crossed, expression flat with practiced boredom. The other, younger, shuffled papers in a folder marked Incident Report. "State your full name again," the younger one demanded. Her voice was steady. "Dr. Cassandra Holt." He glanced at the file, his lips twitching as if trying to hide a smirk. "Doctor, huh? Not medical?" "PhD biochemistry, CEO of Holt Biogen." The older officer snorted quietly. "Figures." Cassandra kept her hands clasped on the table. Every instinct screamed to snap back to rip apart the smugness, but she forced composure. She had spent her life disciplining her tone into something white rooms couldn't twist against her. "You've detained me without cause," she said. "My flight leaves in 20 minutes. This is unlawful." The younger officer flipped another page. "Unlawful? Don't get ahead of yourself. You matched a profile." Her stomach tightened. "What profile?" He shrugged. "Travel pattern, documentation, behavior in line." Random screening escalated, random again. That word scrubbed clean of accountability, wielded like a shield. "Then call my attorney," she said. The older officer stepped forward, voice lowering into condescension. "This isn't a courtroom. You don't get to lawyer up for a little search. We're just doing our jobs." Her breath caught. The phrase struck her like a chain. "Just doing our jobs." "Your job," she replied, "doesn't include harassment?" His lips curled. "Careful." The younger officer pulled out a form and set it on the table, sliding a cheap ballpoint pen across. "Sign this acknowledgement. Standard procedure." Cassandra glanced at the paper. The text blurred for a moment in her swimming vision, but then sharpened. "Passenger consents to voluntary search and interview. Passenger declines legal counsel." Her pulse hammered. "Voluntary?" The younger officer's smile was thin. "You're sitting here, aren't you? That's consent." She leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing. "No, that's coercion." The older officer slammed his palm on the table, rattling the briefcase. The sound reverberated through the small room. "You want to make this difficult? Because we can hold you longer." Silence spread like smoke. Cassandra's hands trembled slightly under the table, invisible to them. She thought of Zurich, of the investors waiting, of her board, who already whispered doubts behind glass doors. Every delay was another crack they could point to. She steadied her voice. "I will not sign that." The younger officer's jaw tightened. He scribbled on the form anyway, muttering, "Refused signature." Her chest clenched. They would write her silence into compliance. They would weaponize every breath. Minutes dragged. The clock on the wall ticked too loud. Somewhere outside, announcements about boarding groups echoed, mocking her. Finally, the older officer leaned back, arms crossed. "You think your titles matter in here. Out there, maybe you're someone. In here, you're just another passenger flagged for irregularities. We have discretion." His words landed heavy. Discretion. Another paper shield giving shape to bias while pretending neutrality. She met his stare, refusing to drop her eyes. "And when you abuse discretion, you expose the system." For a moment, his face twitched, annoyance, maybe even fear, but then it hardened back into stone. The door opened. A third figure entered, a supervisor in a pressed uniform, silver badge gleaming. His tone was clipped, efficient. "What's the hold?" The older officer straightened. "Profile match, sir." Passenger was uncooperative. The word dropped like a gavel. The supervisor's gaze slid over Cassandra, pausing on her briefcase, then her face. His jaw tightened. "Release her. Document the refusal." "But," the younger one started. "Release her," the supervisor repeated. Relief surged through Cassandra, sharp and fleeting, but as she rose, the older officer leaned close, voice barely above a whisper. "Don't think this is over." Her skin burned at the proximity, at the stink of coffee on his breath. She gathered her papers, sliding them back into the briefcase with trembling precision. Every movement was a reclamation, a refusal to let them see her break. As she stepped out into the terminal, the supervisor's voice followed, low but pointed. "We'll file it under non-compliance." The word lodged in her chest like a shard of glass. She was free but not clean. On paper, she was already guilty. Outside, the departure screens glowed with her flight status. Final boarding. Her heart sank. Even if she sprinted, she would never make it. Behind her, the door to the security office clicked shut, sealing in their version of events. Paper shields. Always paper shields. Cassandra's jaw clenched as she adjusted her blazer and strode toward the gate anyway. If she had lost this flight, she would not lose the larger war. The headlines broke before Cassandra reached her office. CEO delayed in airport security. Incident. Passenger becomes uncooperative during screening. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, each vibration another cut. She slid into the back seat of the waiting car, eyes locked on the screen. Some articles used her company headshot, cropped tight, as though daring readers to question whether she truly belonged in a corner office. Her assistant, Maya, sat beside her, nervously clutching a tablet. They're twisting it already. Cassandra's throat burned, but her voice stayed measured. Of course they are. They always write the first draft. They're calling it a misunderstanding. Maya scrolled. And they're saying you refuse to cooperate. Cassandra closed her eyes. That word again. Uncooperative. It spread like a stain, each repetition calcifying into truth. In the boardroom that afternoon, the air was thick with perfume and quiet disapproval. 12 men and women in tailored suits sat around the long glass table. Cassandra at the head, her chair slightly higher, but her authority suddenly fragile. One director cleared his throat. Cassandra, we're concerned about optics. Zurich is in 3 days. If this becomes a distraction, her fingers drummed the polished glass. It's already a distraction, because the system works to humiliate, then erase, and if we say nothing, silence becomes agreement. Another director, a man with silver hair and a perpetually furrowed brow, leaned in. You're not wrong, but investors aren't interested in your personal battles. They want stability, no scandals. Scandal? Cassandra snapped the word sharp as glass. Being stopped without cause is not a scandal. It's an injustice. Silence pressed against the walls. Some directors avoided her gaze, others stared back blankly, their silence louder than disagreement. Later, in her office, the blinds drawn against the skyline, Cassandra sat opposite Maya. Maya spoke hesitantly. Some people online are defending you. A few passengers from the terminal posted what they saw. But the louder voices? They always are, Cassandra cut in. Maya's hands tightened on the tablet. Do you want me to draft a statement? Cassandra shook her head. Not yet. If I speak now, they'll twist my words into arrogance. I need proof. Something undeniable. Her voice faltered at the edges, a fracture hidden beneath steel. She thought of her father's pen, the contracts scattered like debris, how quickly dignity could be dismantled in public with no one daring to intervene. That evening, she returned home to silence. The city lights flickered through her window, indifferent to her storm. She poured a glass of water, hands trembling for the first time all day. Her phone buzzed again, her mother's number. She answered. Cassandra? The voice was soft, lined with worry. I'm fine, Mom. I saw the news. A pause, thick with unspoken memory. It never stops, does it? Cassandra pressed the phone tighter to her ear, eyes burning. No, it doesn't, her mother exhaled, heavy. Then you must decide if you're going to fight, or let them fold this into the pile of forgotten humiliations. Cassandra's jaw tightened. She looked out at the skyline, its glass towers glittering like false promises. I won't let them bury this, she whispered. But outside, in offices and living rooms, the silence thickened. Colleagues who smiled in meetings said nothing publicly. Partners who had shaken her hand last week now sent terse emails sidestepping. News anchors dissected her composure, her tone, the cut of her suit. The echo was always the same. She was too loud, too proud, too unwilling to comply. And in that echo, Cassandra heard the system's true voice. She stared at her reflection in the darkened window. For the first time since the airport, a spark returned to her eyes. If silence was their weapon, she would turn it into her battleground. The boardroom glass reflected a skyline of ambition, towers glowing gold, clouds drifting like smoke caught between steel and sky. Inside, Cassandra felt the weight of 12 eyes judging her every move. The chair of the board, Langford, cleared his throat. His tie was immaculate, his voice clipped. Dr. Holt, the Zurich meeting is critical. We need to ensure nothing undermines investor confidence. Nothing undermines investor confidence more than weakness, Cassandra replied. Her tone was cool, but her pulse beat hot against her throat. If we accept humiliation, we tell the world that power is negotiable, that dignity is expendable. A director with lacquered nails tapped her pen. We sympathize with your ordeal, but filing complaints, going public, these actions drag the company into controversy. Cassandra's gaze swept across the table. You mean they drag me into controversy? Don't hide behind the company. Langford raised a hand, voice soft with paternal authority. Let's be pragmatic. Investors aren't moral arbiters. They care about returns, not civil rights crusades. The words landed like ash in her mouth. Civil rights crusade dismissed, minimized. Cassandra leaned forward. I was pulled aside, searched, and degraded because of who I am. That's not a crusade. That's reality. And if the head of this company can be treated this way, what does that say to every employee who looks to us for leadership? Silence stretched. The men exchanged glances. One woman stared at the table, expression unreadable. Finally, another director spoke, voice careful. There's also risk of escalation, retaliation. Agencies have long memories. Cassandra laughed, short, bitter. So the strategy is surrender. Hide, hope they don't touch us again. Langford's eyes hardened. The strategy is survival. The room felt airless. Cassandra pushed her chair back, the screech of its legs slicing through the polished calm. She stood tall, her reflection fractured in the glass walls around her. You hired me because I built this company from nothing, she said, her voice cutting. You trusted my intellect, my leadership, my resolve. If you think I will bow to silence because it makes you comfortable, you've miscalculated. Langford's lips pressed thin. Consider carefully. Zurich is not the place to make statements. Cassandra gathered her notes, snapping the folder shut with a precision that felt like defiance. No, Langford. Zurich is exactly the place. And if any of you are too afraid to stand beside me, step aside. She walked out before they could respond, the glass door swinging shut behind her. In the corridor, Maya caught up, breathless. That was explosive. Cassandra didn't slow her stride. Explosive is necessary. Maya hesitated. Some of them looked, well, scared. Good, Cassandra said. Let them be. Fear means they understand what's at stake. They entered the elevator, doors closing like a seal. For a moment, Cassandra allowed herself to exhale, the tension breaking just enough to feel her exhaustion. But then her phone buzzed again. A new headline lit the screen. Board divided over CEO's conduct in airport incident. She let out a sharp, humorless laugh. They didn't waste time. Maya's voice was quiet. They're framing it as instability. Cassandra stared at the glowing headline. The smoke wasn't just in the sky outside. It was seeping into her own glass tower, curling around her name, her authority. She tightened her grip on the phone, eyes hardening. Then we cut through the smoke. The elevator doors opened. She stepped out into the darkened lobby, resolve sharpening like steel. The tower might burn before this was over, but she would not be the one choking on its smoke. The airport's administration wing smelled of polish and authority. Corridors lined with framed commendations and grainy photos of ribbon cuttings. Cassandra's heels clicked against marble, each step echoing her irritation. She had been summoned to a discussion with the head of security. Maya walked beside her, holding a slim folder. Are you sure about this? Cassandra's voice was cool. If they want to see me, they'll see me. On my terms. They reached a door etched with brass letters. Chief Security Officer Daniel Kraus. Maya hesitated. Do you want me inside? No. Take notes from the lobby. If they try anything, we'll have a record. Cassandra entered alone. The office was oversized, dominated by dark wood and the faint smell of cigar smoke. Behind the desk sat Daniel Kraus, a man with a thick neck, thinning hair, and the satisfied posture of someone unaccustomed to accountability. Dr. Holt, he said, lips curling. Quite the fuss in my terminal yesterday. She closed the door softly, letting silence hang before she spoke. Your officers harassed me. They rifled through confidential documents, humiliated me in public, and fabricated a report. Kraus leaned back, hands laced over his chest. Protocol, nothing more. You fit a profile. Officers acted within their rights. That word again, she said sharply. Profile. A catch-all to excuse bias, he smirked. You think bias explains everything. Sometimes, Dr. Holt, it's just about probability and security. If you felt uncomfortable, unfortunate. But safety comes first. Cassandra's jaw tightened. Safety? I was never a threat. I was a target. Krause's eyes glinted, amusement flickering. You're a public figure. Cameras notice. People talk, but at the end of the day the record shows what we write, and the record says you were uncooperative. Her chest constricted at the word. Always that word. You write reality, then call it truth. Exactly, he said, almost pleased with himself. And fighting that truth. Not a wise career move. Cassandra stepped closer to the desk, eyes fixed on him. You're not warning me. You're threatening me. Krause didn't flinch. Call it perspective. You run a company. You understand pressure, optics. The world doesn't change because you shout. Her voice lowered to a razor's edge. My father's name was written off like this. My grandfather's too. Every time the same pattern. Bias hidden under paperwork. Injustice stamped with official seals. You hide behind names on forms, but I know the weight of names, and I'll make sure yours is remembered for this. For the first time, his smirk slipped. His hands dropped to the desk. Careful, Dr. Holt. She turned sharply, hand on the door. No, Chief Krause. You should be careful. In the lobby, Maya looked up as Cassandra emerged. How did it go? Cassandra adjusted her blazer, voice steady though her hands trembled faintly. He thinks paperwork is a shield. We'll make it his downfall. Maya's brows knit. How? Paper trails, Cassandra said. Every false line, every discretionary call, it leaves a shadow. We find the shadow. We drag it into light. They walked out of the building, past polished floors and indifferent staff. Cassandra's reflection glared back at her from the glass doors, tired but unbroken. That night, Cassandra sat alone in her apartment, the city outside restless and glittering. She spread the documents Maya had gathered across her dining table. Memos, copies of policy manuals, photographs from witnesses, names recurred, officers signing off, supervisors rubber stamping, reports stamped confidential. Each name carried weight, and each weight pressed down on her until she could barely breathe. But then she thought of her father, of the fountain pen he gave her when she graduated. Make your name indelible, he had said. She picked up the pen from where it lay on her desk. Ink bled onto paper as she began drafting the first real strike. A formal complaint, detailed and unflinching. Not for the sake of process, but to set the record that she refused to be erased. The weight of their names would crush them. But hers would endure. The office lights were dim, the city outside a scatter of neon and fog. Cassandra sat at her desk, the glow of her laptop illuminating her face. Maya leaned over her shoulder, eyes darting across the screen. There, Maya whispered, pointing. Internal memo. Dated last month. Cassandra scrolled slowly, pulse quickening. The document was bland on the surface. Routine notes on heightened vigilance protocols. But between the bureaucratic lines, bias bled through. Profiles indicate increased risk associated with travelers fitting specific behavioral and demographic markers. Her lips pressed into a line. Demographic markers. A coded phrase with centuries of history. Who sent this? Cassandra asked. Maya enlarged the header. The name glared back at them. Chief Daniel Krause. Cassandra's chest tightened. The shield of paper was cracking. The whistleblower's voice trembled through the speakerphone. I don't know how long I can talk. If they trace this back, they won't, Cassandra said firmly. Maya added, We're routing through a secure line. No one will know. The voice paused, then continued. Look, the system flags people based on categories that aren't supposed to exist anymore. Race, nationality, travel history. But Krause insists it's justified. He calls it pattern recognition. And anyone who questions him, gone, reassigned, career dead. Cassandra felt heat in her veins. So the harassment is systematic, not random. Yes, a sigh heavy with fear. But you didn't hear this from me. If they find out... The line went dead. Cassandra leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. We have enough to expose him. Maya was cautious. Not yet. A leaked memo and one anonymous voice. The media will demand more. And Krause will bury us under denials. Cassandra's eyes narrowed. Then we need irrefutable proof, video logs, something they can't erase. Maya hesitated. That means hacking into their archives. Silence. The risk was clear. A misstep could cost Cassandra, her company, her reputation, maybe more. But then she thought of Zurich, of the investors who would judge her worthiness. She thought of the boy in line whispering, "They always stop them." Her voice was steel. "Then we go into the shadows." 2 nights later, Maya slid a flash drive across Cassandra's desk. Encrypted footage, sourced from an insider. Took a lot of persuasion. Cassandra plugged it in. The screen flickered. Grainy airport footage filled the monitor, her own figure at the checkpoint standing tall while officers rifled her belongings. Audio bled faint but clear. "People like you don't run companies." The words, preserved in digital permanence, cut through her again like a blade. But this time Cassandra's eyes burned not with humiliation, but with fury. Maya whispered, "This is it. The proof." Cassandra exhaled slowly. "No, Maya, this is the spark. Now we set the fire." The city outside pulsed with light, oblivious to the storm she was about to unleash. Cassandra saved the file, locked it behind layers of encryption, and leaned back in her chair. The paper shields were cracking. The shadows were on her side now, and for the first time since Zurich began slipping from her grasp, Cassandra allowed herself the faintest smile. The video leaked on a Thursday morning. It began as a trickle, a few anonymous accounts on social media, grainy footage of the checkpoint. But by midday it spread like wildfire. The clip was short, 38 seconds, but it contained everything. The officer rifling through her belongings, Cassandra standing rigid, and the line crystal clear despite background noise. "People like you don't run companies." By noon, hashtags swarmed. News anchors replayed the clip on loop, voices thick with scripted outrage. Commentators debated tone, context, what really happened. Cassandra watched it unfold from her office, Maya at her side. Maya's phone buzzed constantly. "CNN wants a statement, BBC too. Everyone's asking if you'll comment." Cassandra kept her eyes on the screen. One anchor leaned forward dramatically, hands steepled. Was this racism or a case of an officer's words being taken out of context? She muttered under her breath. Context is always their shield. Maya glanced at her. "Do we answer?" "Not yet," Cassandra said. Her voice was calm, but inside her pulse drummed. "Let the world argue first. The more they talk, the bigger this becomes." By evening, the firestorm consumed everything. At a news panel, 4 experts dissected the clip. A former prosecutor shook his head. "It looks bad, but we don't know the full story." Was she flagged for legitimate reasons? A corporate consultant chimed in. "She's a CEO. With that kind of visibility, she has to expect scrutiny. The question is, did she escalate the situation herself?" Across the screen, a lone activist cut in sharply. "Stop deflecting. We all know what that phrase means. People like you don't run companies. That isn't security protocol. That's bias, plain and simple." The panel erupted in crosstalk. Cassandra turned off the TV, the sudden silence loud in her ears. The next morning, her board called an emergency meeting. The glass conference room buzzed with tension. Langford's voice was taut. "The situation is spiraling. Investors are nervous. Zurich representatives are already asking questions." Cassandra leaned forward. "Good. That means they're paying attention." Another director snapped. "Attention isn't the goal. Stability is. If you go public, if you start talking, this becomes your crusade, not the company's." Cassandra's reply was ice. "This isn't my crusade. This is what happened. And if Holt Biogen stands for anything, it cannot stand silent in the face of proof." The room bristled. Langford pressed his palms flat on the table. "Cassandra, do not mistake sympathy for support. If this company burns because you choose to fan flames, Zurich won't just walk away, they'll run." She met his stare without blinking. "Then maybe they were never worth having." Outside the boardroom, Maya whispered, "You're pushing them hard." "I know," Cassandra said. She rubbed her temple. "But sometimes pressure shows who people really are." Her phone buzzed again. This time, a journalist. She answered. "This is Cassandra Holt." The voice on the other end was brisk. "Dr. Holt, this is Aaron Vaughn, Investigative Desk, The Ledger. We've reviewed the footage. Off the record, there's more, isn't there?" Cassandra's heart skipped. She said nothing. Vaughn pressed on. "I have sources inside TSA whispering about profiling directives. If you talk to me, we can take this further than 38 seconds of video." Cassandra glanced at Maya. Her assistant mouthed silently, "Careful." Cassandra inhaled. "Not yet. When I move, it won't be half a story." She hung up, her hand trembling only slightly. That evening, Cassandra scrolled through comments on her phone. She's exaggerating, always playing the race card. But the video doesn't lie. That officer knew exactly what he was saying. Each word was a blade, but also fuel. Her mother called again. Cassandra, you're everywhere. Be careful. I can't be careful, Cassandra said quietly. Not anymore. Her mother's voice softened. Then be ready. The court of public opinion. It doesn't forgive easily, and it doesn't forget what it wants to forget. Cassandra stared out at the skyline. Then I'll remind them. The next day, Krauss himself appeared on television. His uniform crisp, his tone smooth. Our officers acted appropriately, he said. This clip has been taken out of context. The passenger was uncooperative, and our priority is safety for all travelers. Uncooperative. Again. The word slammed against Cassandra's chest like a hammer. Reporters nodded, scribbling as though his script carried weight. Cassandra turned off the screen, fury cold and sharp. He thinks he can spin this into dust, she muttered. Maya asked quietly. What do we do? Cassandra's answer was immediate. We show the whole truth, not just 38 seconds. She sat at her desk long into the night, footage looping on the screen, memos spread across the table. The world was watching. Every silence, every hesitation, every carefully chosen word could be turned against her. But Cassandra Holt knew one thing. The court of public opinion was brutal, but it was also hungry. Hungry for proof, for story, for justice dressed in spectacle, and she would feed it on her terms. The hearing room smelled of stale carpet and tension. Fluorescent lights buzzed above the long oak table where officials from the Department of Transportation, the airport board, and security command sat lined like stone statues. Cameras flashed from the press section. At the far end, Chief Daniel Krauss adjusted his collar, jaw rigid. To his right, Cassandra Holt sat poised, back straight, fingers lightly clasped on the folder before her. Maya sat just behind her, silent but steady. The chairwoman banged her gavel. This inquiry will determine whether airport security policies were violated and whether misconduct occurred in the handling of Dr. Holt. Krauss leaned into the microphone, voice smooth. With respect, my officers acted according to established protocols. Dr. Holt was uncooperative, creating unnecessary tension. The video circulating online is incomplete, edited to cast events unfairly. Cassandra's mouth tightened. Uncooperative. Always that word. The chairwoman turned. Dr. Holt, your response? Cassandra leaned forward, voice clear. Protocols don't include racial slurs. Protocols don't justify dismantling private property without cause. And protocols certainly don't grant officers the right to tell a black woman she doesn't belong in leadership. Murmurs rippled across the room. Krauss's jaw twitched. That statement has been misinterpreted. Cassandra cut him off. It was recorded. The public heard it. The only misinterpretation here is your assumption that your words could be buried under paperwork. For hours, the inquiry pressed on. Officials shuffled through memos, questioned both sides. When Cassandra presented the leaked directive with its language of demographic markers, the room's mood shifted. One committee member frowned. Chief Krauss, this memo bears your signature. It outlines targeted screening criteria by demographic categories. How do you explain this? Krauss cleared his throat, sweat purling at his temple. That language is being misconstrued. It refers to behavioral, the member interrupted. It says markers, that is not behavioral language. That is profiling. The silence that followed was suffocating. During a recess, reporters swarmed Cassandra in the hallway. Microphones thrust forward, questions hurled. Dr. Holt, do you believe this inquiry will remove Krauss? Is this about personal justice or systemic reform? Are you afraid of backlash? Cassandra lifted her chin, voice measured. This is about truth. And truth does not bow to backlash. Inside, Krauss unraveled. His opening composure frayed as more evidence surfaced. Complaints from other passengers. Internal emails laced with dismissive remarks. Whistleblower statements corroborating bias. Pressed, he grew defensive. This is political. An orchestrated attack against me. I've given 30 years to this institution. Cassandra responded calmly. 30 years of protecting yourself, not the public. The phrase landed like a knife. Even the committee chair paused, watching Krauss with a new, colder gaze. By late afternoon, the gavel struck again. This committee finds significant evidence of misconduct and systemic failures in airport security leadership. Effective immediately, Chief Krause is suspended pending further investigation. Gasps erupted. Cameras clicked furiously. Krause slammed his palm on the table. This is outrageous. Cassandra met his outburst with stillness. No, Chief, this is accountability. He glared at her as guards approached, fury boiling in his eyes. You think you've won? You'll regret this. She held his gaze until he was escorted out, his authority stripped in full view of the nation. That evening, Cassandra returned to her office. The skyline glowed in twilight, towers silver and sharp. Maya entered quietly, setting a fresh stack of articles on the desk. Every outlet is running with it. Headlines are brutal for him. She hesitated. But they're also complicated for you. Some say you're brave. Others say you're reckless. Cassandra touched the stack of papers but didn't read them. Her voice was low. That's the cost. Poetic justice isn't clean. It leaves ash. Maya studied her. Do you regret it? Cassandra's eyes stayed fixed on the city. No, but I feel the weight. The glass towers outside shimmered, beautiful and indifferent. The gatekeepers had collapsed, but the system that built them still loomed. Cassandra closed her eyes briefly, then straightened. We're not finished. Tomorrow the work begins again. The city had already moved on. Headlines shifted to new scandals, new markets rising and falling. The uproar that once consumed Cassandra's every waking moment was reduced to archived clips and forgotten hashtags. But scars do not fade with news cycles. On a quiet Saturday morning, Cassandra sat on the balcony of her apartment, coffee steaming in the cold air. The skyline glimmered, bright and indifferent. Maya joined her, dropping into the chair opposite. They've appointed a new chief at the airport, Maya said. Someone with a clean record, at least on paper. Cassandra smirked faintly. Paper is patient. It holds anything you write on it. They're implementing oversight committees, too. Transparency audits, bias training. Cassandra sipped her coffee. Bandages. But the wound is still deep. Maya hesitated, then asked, Do you ever wish you hadn't fought it? That you just walked away? Cassandra's gaze lingered on the skyline. Her voice was low, certain. Walking away would have cost me more. Silence would have buried me alive. Later that week, she returned to her company headquarters. The boardroom still held tension, but subdued, wary of her resolve. Zurich had resumed cautious talks. Investors watched with new calculations. Langford avoided her eyes. Others nodded politely, even deferentially. Cassandra addressed them with measured clarity. This company is not just profit margins. It is reputation. It is principle. We either carry both or we carry nothing. No one argued. For once, silence bent in her favor. Months passed. Cassandra traveled again, this time through a different airport. Security lines stretched, shoes came off, laptops slid into trays. An officer approached her briefly, scanning her passport. Recognition flickered in his eyes. He straightened. Dr. Holt. Safe travels, no suspicion. No delay, just acknowledgement. Professional, careful. Cassandra nodded once, passing through without pause. The gesture was small, but it echoed louder than any headline. At home that evening, her mother visited. They cooked together in quiet rhythm, pots simmering, knives chopping. Her mother broke the silence. You carry it all in your shoulders. I can see it. Cassandra set down her knife, exhaled. I carry it because I can. Because someone must. Her mother placed a hand over hers. Don't let it harden you. The fight matters, yes, but so does the living that comes after. For the first time in weeks, Cassandra allowed herself to laugh softly. Living. That part I forget sometimes. In the solitude of night, Cassandra opened her laptop. Drafts of speeches, policy outlines, letters to lawmakers filled the screen. She stared at the blinking cursor, aware of what had been lost. Time, energy, innocence, and what had been gained. A fracture in the armor of a system that thought itself untouchable. She typed slowly, deliberately. Justice is not loud. It is not swift. It does not heal. Justice is the refusal to stay silent in the face of silence itself. She saved the file. The work would continue. Weeks later, she received a letter. Not from investors, not from journalists, but from a young woman in Atlanta. I saw what you did. I watched you stand even when they tried to bury you. Because of you, I stayed in school. Because of you, I believe I can lead. Cassandra read the words twice, then set the letter gently on her desk. The weight in her chest eased, not vanished but shifted, carried differently. One final time she returned to the terminal where everything began. She walked through, unnoticed, a single traveler among thousands. The fluorescent lights hummed as always, indifferent, but Cassandra saw the place differently now. Not as a scar, not even as a victory, but as a reminder that injustice, once dragged into the light, cannot return fully to shadow. She paused, whispered to herself the words that had once been thrown like a knife, now reshaped into iron. People like me do run companies, and then she walked on.